The Discover Islam Week is a yearly event. It's led by the Islamic Society of Newcastle University, ISOC. The event hosts different speakers and promote different activities, all to explain Islam to the non-Muslims. One of the main speakers for this year was Mrs. Yasmeen Nahlawi,
Islam is a religion that makes sense.
a Syrian-American law PhD candidate.
If you hear something that sounds so bizarre about Islam that it just doesn't make sense, then it probably isn't true. So to say that a religion accepted by people just like yourselves condemns democracy or goes against the values of human rights and individual rights, this is something that doesn't make sense, and right enough, it's something that's not true. What I did was I broke down democracy into 3 parts. Let's say all democracies in the world share justice, equality, and individual rights. So let's look at each of these 3 components and see how they're manifested in Islam. Let's start with justice. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "The most beloved to God and the closest to Him on the day of judgment is a just ruler. And the farthest from God and the most distant to Him on the day of judgment is an unjust ruler or a tyrant." So just from this we see that Islam places justice, way at the top in the government institutions. This is something that is very advocated for. And I'm going to give you a very brief example. It's a simple example, but we're going to extract some powerful lessons from it. During the time of Umar, who was the second caliph after the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the caliph wanted to expand the mosque of the Prophet, and in order to do so, he needed to take possession of a house of a man named Abbas. So he goes to Abbas and he offers him monetary compensation for his house, and he tells him, "I need to take your house to expand it into the mosque." And Abbas refused. And when the caliph was adamant about taking his house, the man went to the judge, and the judge summoned the caliph. The judge told the caliph, "You really have no right and no basis to take his house from him." And the caliph was forced to submit to the ruling of the judge. So this is a really, really simple story, and we have many more powerful examples of justice in action, but we extract 2 lessons from this. The first is it shows the caliph's accountability under the law. Once the judge had made his ruling, the caliph was not able to overrule the judge. And the second thing that we see is the separation of the judicial institution. So the judge was not feared, or he was not fearful of the caliph. He was able to rule against the caliph without fear of persecution. So this is not an institution in which the religious bodies are just issuing decrees for the benefit of the government. Let's move on to equality. Equality in Islam is based on 5 basic assumptions. So the first is that we're all created by God. The second is we're all descendants of Adam and Eve. We all have a common lineage. The third is that God doesn't have a preference for any race, age, gender, or what have you. Okay, we're all His creation. The fourth thing is that we're all born equal. All the differences between us, the differences in our colors, our genders, everything, this is just incidental. In the sense that when we're born, we don't bring any material possessions with us into this world. And when we die, we are not going to take anything with us back into the afterlife. But what we're going to be judged on is our merits. So these 5 assumptions really show that. Now I'm sure you've all heard of Malcolm X. Malcolm X was an African American. He was a follower of the Nation of Islam, which I'll say for now is not the same as Islam as is practiced. But anyway, he was a follower of the Nation of Islam, which preached that white people are devils. So Malcolm X was an avid preacher of this idea that white people are devils until he performed the pilgrimage to Mecca. And you can all see a picture of this pilgrimage right here behind me. And basically once a year, people and Muslims from all over the world gather in Mecca and perform a pilgrimage side by side. So Malcolm X was surrounded with Muslims from all over the world, and he was struck at how Muslims from different backgrounds were able to communicate with each other and treat each other just as if they were brothers and sisters. So he really reevaluated his race perception. Needless to say, he stopped preaching that white people were devils, but he also went on to say that the solution to the race problem in America was through Islam. Let's go back to the time of Umar, the second caliph we mentioned earlier. So Umar was on a journey to Jerusalem. And obviously in the Islamic world and under Islam, the destruction of religious institutions is prohibited. So Umar was offered to pray inside a church. And what he said, he declined. He said, I'm not going to pray in this church. I'm afraid that when I die, people will say that Umar prayed in this church, so they're going to destroy it and build a mosque in its place. He said, no, I'm going to pray on the road and the church will stay as it is. This is to show the religious freedom under Islam. Right to life, liberty, fair trial, religious freedom, all those rights like we said in the beginning. Islam is a religion that makes sense, and it makes sense for a religion to grant human rights and individual rights. I'm not going to list all these one by one. To conclude, I can hear a lot of people say, this is all very nice and pretty, but this is not what's practiced in the Muslim world today. And this is sadly true. What I will say to that really quickly is that Islam flourished during times of democracy and freedom. And the Islamic world declined when it was ruled through fear and oppression. So what this tells us is that Islam can't support anything other than political freedom and democracy. So I'm going to end on that note. I hope it's been beneficial. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me or any of the volunteers in the red t-shirts. And thank you for your time.
The ISOC continues their activities and events to promote Islam.
الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار.